Hey there. I got Bubba here, ready for his session. This is my personal horse. He's a little nervous because we're in the barn and away from all of his buddies because it's too windy to video outside. So hopefully he's a good boy for us today. I'm just going to show you really quick how I use my hand as a tool for massage. So generally I use the flat part of my knuckles like this, and I put this part against the skin and brush. You can also use the flat part higher up on your knuckles, like a fist, for the bigger muscles. As you get into the finer, smaller muscles, like on the forearm, you can use your fingers, or you can use your thumb if you prefer. Let's see if my camera will let me. On the finer muscles, you can use your thumb. Forearms are nice so you can actually get your hand all the way around and grab the entire muscle. And then we do something called hook fingers. So this is what my fingers look like when I'm doing the hook. And so I'm going on the inside of his forearm right here. I'm doing hook fingers. I'm hooking just right above the carpus and pulling up to the elbow. This is really hard on your fingers because you kind of have to lock your finger joints, but it's a really good tool to work for all these inside muscles. You can also use your palm if you prefer, but after my years of doing human massage, I found that doing this seems to hurt my elbows and my shoulders more. So depending on the horse, I'll generally stick to using the flat part of my knuckles or in the bottom part of my fingers. If you need a pointier part, you could of course angle in and go deeper with the pointed part of your knuckles. But this all depends on the horse. Some horses like this and some don't. I've also got a point where I like to use kind of this flat pointy part of my finger, most of the time in the crease of the neck, kind of gauge how deep we can push in the crease of the neck. And most horses, if they've got a nice loose neck junction, you should be able to get your fingers dug inside of there, and you should be able to bury them all the way inside. And he's even got his neck turned for me, so we should be able to dig in there a little bit. Yep, he's too tight. So I should be able to bury my fingers all the way in to this part, almost to my palm, if the neck is really loose. So you're going to follow along the deltoideus muscle right along the shoulder blade. I like to do each stroke 3 times, adding a little bit of pressure and slowing each stroke down to help feel like it's going deeper into the tissue. Next, we're going to come right behind the deltoideus and go into the triceps muscle. This is a big muscle, so I generally start at the back and work my way forward. So this muscle is so big, it's taking me 3 strokes to do the entire muscle, but I still want to make sure I work on that muscle 3 times. Next, I'm going to follow down into the forearm. This time I'm just using the flat part of my fingers. I just find it a little easier for this spot. You can also use the flat part of your knuckle if you prefer. And so we're going to stop just above the carpus right here. We don't want to push very hard right into the carpus. If you feel like you want to go all the way down the leg, you sure can. But I'm not really using a lot of pressure. If you pictured pulling your fingers and wiggling your fingers, that's about the same thing that I'm doing down the leg. Next, I'm going to come to the lateral extensor here. Then the digital flexor at the back. This time I'm using mainly my thumb, but I'm also squeezing with my fingers on the inside of the forearm. Sometimes that'll make them feel like they want to pick their foot up, which is fine. And from there I'm going to follow and go into his pec and come straight up into the insertion into the neck. Next we're going to get in the neck groove, come all the way up into his head. Slow, firm, even pressure. Most horses have a lot of tension here, and they'll begin to fidget. When you get to usually the C2 or Atlas junction, this is a nice time to slow down and let the horse release and relax and enjoy the stroke. You can either do the same stroke 3 times in a row, or you can go down a little further and do the entire neck 3 times. Generally when they fidget, it's usually an indication that there's an issue there. So when they fidget, I like to take a moment and pause on that spot. Generally, as you're pausing or shortly after, then they'll release. Then the second time you go over their spot, they shouldn't fidget. If they do, I would stop again and let them release further. A lot of times you'll notice they'll fidget in a different spot than they did the first time. See, now he's a little further up in his neck. So we're just going to hold that there until he's done fidgeting. I'm going to come back in and use my thumb as a harder point for this spot just because he's showing me that he's got something going on here. So I'm going to use a little bit of firm, even pressure just with my thumb. I'm not pushing super hard. Good boy. And when he gives me a release, I'm going to stop and give him a break for a second. This is a good example of why I like to do the stroke multiple times on the same muscle or same muscle group. Because each time you go back, you can find something new or something's changed, or the spot where they release is different. This is a little bit of a deeper stroke, but if you follow along the crest of the scapula, this is a pretty nice just junction kind of. Call it the neck junction. But it kind of gauges where there's the most tension. If you just kind of do a quick check right in here. He's obviously got something going on in here. So we're going to work on that a little bit. As you get doing this and you get to know your horse, you'll get to see the signs of release or impending release. Obviously, since Bubba's my personal horse, I know kind of his personality. He tends to not release a lot when you're touching him. As you see, as I step back and give him a moment, he kind of releases a lot better. He likes to fidget. He's generally kind of an impatient horse. He's doing really good for being alone in the barn. It's a little too windy to video outside. So he keeps looking out the door at you. There we go. And since Bubba likes to carry his head kind of high, he usually generally builds up a lot of tension in his poll. Most horses do. It's the most common area for them to have issues.